Hello everybody, my name is Giessmann, and some of you may know me and Pia Scofford as Lavamachine. So we are virtual reality freelancers, and we work together since 2017. Before I started as a director for animated short film, maybe Piers can tell a little bit about what he's doing actually.
I'm. My background is actually I'm a 2D illustrator since a decade, and illustrator and animator, doing some explanatory movies or graphic recordings. And in 2017-18 or something, I discovered with Eric first VR animation tools or VR in general, which was super exciting. And since then we just kept on doing VR animation.
So today we want to show you how you can easily pipeline from Quill to Maya. And I choose Maya because I actually started with Maya. That's my the software I'm using with everything. But at the same time, you also can use your own software, which you're used to, like Blender or something else. I try to have answer some general questions, but it's the big part of this talk today really will be about Maya. Okay, then let's start with Quill then. I already opened the scene that you can see here. It's I called it the Yokozuna Sumo artwork, and what you can see is two sumo wrestlers. I'm gonna play it now so you can see what's happening. All right, that's it. So the idea behind it is it wasn't too important for me what actually artwork this is going to become, but it was more important for me to have something for trying out this pipeline to create a shader that looks like real clay. And so I'm gonna start the video file now. What's happening later. Yeah, and there's also a loop from a different camera angle. And another one. Yep, that's it. So that's really what I wanted to create. I'm very happy with that artwork because I think I create some cool shader in it. I think it's possible for you to easily create something like that very fast. So really the most time I spent really with the fine tuning of the shader. But the basics are really easy to learn. So I think I'm gonna start with some parts inside virtual reality now. So I first created some sketches, and these are some inspiration pictures which I also pulled inside virtual reality and Quill. And after that I went back to my sketchboard and made some rough sketches about the timeline and what's going to happen inside VR later. And then I just immediately started with everything. And for the basic setup, this is a menu of Quill. I don't go too much into Quill because there are really a lot of other good tutorials that show everything perfectly here. I want to go straight to what I did here and go to the background, for example, or the animation. And here you also can see that, first of all, let's talk about the frames per second. And it shows, can you see that? It's 6 frames per second. And also the reason why I choose to go 6 frames per second is also to mimic that feeling of a clay shader later of stop motion film. And in here you can see that I just used one layer for one guy and just another painting layer for the other guy. And all the other stuff is in the background layer. And here these are just saves. So, and also the reason why I did that is because to keep it very simple and to keep the overview. So most animators, or at least Quill, Guru showed me in the last tutorial that he used a lot of subgroups and parent folders and for creating a rig, but I try to keep it very basic in that way, and just animated it in a little bit like, let's see, I'm on the wrong figure. Animate a little bit like just like that, right? So, and sometimes I use the selection function to manipulate the whole leg or parts of the body, but most of the time I try to stay with that nudge tool or the grab tool. Yeah, that's about that. And let's now come directly to the export options, which I now can find here on the right side. And then I hit this button over there. You also have a couple of new things that came with the last plugins. For example, capture animation and the render camera, but we will now talk about that immediately. And here you have the export options, and it's we first have to choose which format we want to use. And I figured out the best thing you can use for the Maya pipeline is really the FBX. There's also an Alembic, USD, USDZ, and EMM, but I'm not sure about these formats. I really never have tried them, but the FBX is just perfect for scene. And yeah,
so I can elaborate on that a little bit. So basically, IMM is the Quill format itself. That's the format that gets uploaded to Media Studio if you share to VR. USD is, I believe, a Pixar standardized format for industry standards that is similar to Alembic, but I think it's in general has more functionalities and more powerful. But in Quill, it doesn't support animation export. So yeah, definitely FBX and Alembic are good formats to export animation.
Mm-hmm. So we just stay with FBX for the moment. And he's already asking you if you want to export hidden groups. So we don't do that because we don't want anything that is hidden. And also he's asking you to export, if you want to export meshes. Of course we want meshes. And also to make transforms. I'm not too sure about what's happening with that one. Because everything works fine here for later. And also I can export curves, but I don't need them. So when you create a stroke, it's basically creating a curve inside that mesh, right? So that's what's happening here. And but we don't need that later. And also, I first thought this is very important to export a specific color space, but it isn't really, because we can easily add a color correction node later. So just do whatever you like, let it on the standard settings linear. And there's the export UVs. We can do that, but we don't necessarily need them because we want to create the UVs later on as well, again, with automatic mapping. I will show you later what's happened when you do that and when you don't. There's also export animation. That's important, of course, because we need animations. And what that does is it asks you if you want to have a material for each layer that you created. So for this one, whatever. And but it's also up to you if you want to have a material on everything. We don't really need that. Just give everything a proper file name, like blah. No, I'm just kidding. Like Yokozuna or Sumo something. Sumo image. The performance is a bit down for me at the moment because I'm recording and have Maya open at the same time, but it's still working somehow. So I hit done and then just go choose the correct folder and hit export, and then he's doing the magic. So that's the Quill part actually. Okay, so here we are. Maybe this is already familiar for you. I hope so. Because I will give you some really cool tips for importing everything in here and make a cool shader. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I will import the scene I just exported, and I can find it under usually under C users, UPC, and scenes, wherever you exported it. It should be inside the folder of Quill, and I just exported the Sumo, and here I have some tryouts, so I also can just import that one, for example. It's basically the same. I can import it. We can decide if we want to import it into a group or use namespaces, but because I hate namespaces, I just deselected, but put it in a group, maybe import, and then he is calculating it. There's also another thing, I also forgot to hide these images in the background, so they are now planes, but I just easily can use the keys Control H to hide them, hide everything, and also hide the grid here over there because it's in the way of our scene. Or no, I forgot to reposition that leg back, but okay.
Can you actually show, somebody is asking for the wireframe, if you can show the wireframe of the whole thing. If you can turn on wireframe on shaded real quick.
Yeah. It should be here somewhere. Wireframe on shaded. Yeah. And then you can see everything that every polygons. I also want to show you some other thing before I start with the scene. There's some other option that you can use which is useful for virtual reality. You can create the reference, and you're doing that by going into File, Create Reference, and create a reference from that file. I'm going to use that Sumo thing again, or maybe that one is better. Reference, and now he's loading it again, but as it is a reference, if you do changes in Quill or in any other virtual reality software, then the changes, if you export it, are also immediately inside Maya. But the referencing method comes with some disadvantages, that some of these options that you have. Some of these attributes are not manipulatable anymore. So I figured out the best thing is just to import everything. So you have a clean file and can do everything you want to do. And but there's also another benefit of referencing stuff, because in Maya it's difficult to import FBX twice, because Maya always knows that this is the same scene. So if you do import anything, then it replaces the old version. So a better thing is to just first go and duplicate this one, duplicate the reference. Okay, now he's calculating again. Wait a second.
Also, when you use references, and if you, for example, then go back to Quill and add like a new stroke, Maya wouldn't know what shader to apply, right? Because it's a new object in the reference.
Yes.
Right? That's another problem, right? Then, like, if you change geometry or remove stuff, that Maya gets confused, and sometimes you mess up the shaders that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's also a reason why I like to just import stuff. But you can also say, if you referenced it, you can say import object from reference, and then he cleans that, and you have a duplication of the whole scene, and can do stuff with it. So it's a bit difficult to describe that. You just have to keep in mind that the reference editor exists and that you can try out stuff with it. And I'm gonna delete that for a second here, because we don't need 3 themes. And now before, did you ask for the wireframe on shaded because you can't see it so good, because the background was
no, it was just somebody. I think Piano was just interested in seeing it, so you can turn it off.
Okay, because I also can use the default material here, so to see it better. But that's really some part I want to talk about now. It's the best thing you can do is to set up your viewport first by let's see, where was it? By going into the mesh display. And this is a very hidden menu, because you really have to look closely to see that. But I found out this is a very important menu if you work with Vertex Colors, and we are basically now working with Vertex Colors again and with virtual reality, and not too much with UV maps, because everything is stored into Vertex Colors. I hope you know the difference a little bit, because it really would go into detail if I talk about the difference now between Vertex Colors and UV maps, but I try. So what you can see in the color set editor is the color set, which Quill uses. And with every virtual reality software that you use, it's a different name. It's really important to understand that. And we need that name in order to create a shader that is working later, because what you see here is not what you see later in the Redshift render view. So but I first will set up this viewport now to see the colors here. And we are now still in the color set editor, and we click on display all, color material channel set known. And the next thing we're going to do is all color and shaded display on. And now both is on, but we can't see it because I just toggled this on. And so I just deselect it again. And now everything is fine in the viewport. You can see your vertex colors. And if I now want to, this freaks me out a little bit. So I just double click on the leg, and now just the leg is selected, right? And I can easily manipulate it and drag it back a little bit to be in the correct position, right? And I'm also doing it with the foot. Oh no, it's yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. So that's also a way how you can manipulate things, right? You just double click on an object or a surface like this. I'll make it more visible like this, and he selects automatically just the leg, for example, to do some fine-tuning.
But that would be only for the current frame, right? To edit.
Yeah, it's just working for the current frame. And yeah, that's also one thing. It's important to understand how this actually works. I want to talk about that now. But first, there's another thing I want to show you. To set up the viewport colors correctly, you should also go to the renderer and set viewport 2.0. And here you can see there's this transparency algorithm. We set it to depth peeling and increase the transparency quality. This is important for showing correctly the transparency channels inside the viewport. But because we don't have any transparency channels in that scene, you won't see any difference now. But that's one thing you also can do to set up it correctly in Maya. And what Guru just told me is it's also very important to see actually what's going on inside the animation. And every virtual reality software uses a different way to handle animation keyframes inside the export. And Quill uses the way that it just creates for a keyframe, an object for every keyframe that's in the animation. So as you can see here, if I go into the subgroups of everything, like of this guy, for example, the Yokozuna, right, then I can see that the first keyframe is actually one object. And what is really happening here is the visibility is keyframed from on now to off, right? So and then the next keyframe is taken into account. So which is a hold, so it holds a bit longer. But before it was just this. And now the second keyframe is a hold, so it's going from on over here to off over here. And the frames per second count is actually over here, which now is 30 frames per second. But you remember I animated everything in 6 frames per second. So what is the best thing we now can do? It's very easy and powerful in Maya that you just can switch it to 6 frames per second. And Quill is programmed and is developed in such a way that it keeps that stretch into account. And so that even if you have 6 frames per second, everything is in the correct. If you play it, then you will see everything is correctly timed. So the first thing when I started with piping into Maya, I thought I also have to keep it in 6 frames per second, but that's not really the case. You also could easily jump to 24 frames per second. And the reason why I want that is because I later want to create some cameras. And if we would stay in 6 frames per second, then the camera, of course, wouldn't be smooth. So I immediately jumped to 24 frames per second in order to have a smooth camera later. And everything is keeping in place nicely. So it's still the same and perfect animation cycle. Right.
So basically you're saying whatever frame rate you choose, the speed of the imported FBX will stay the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can show you. If I now toggle down to 6 frames per second, then it's should be, it's exactly the same timing, you know. I don't know how to say that maybe in words, but I hope
I think I get it. Yeah. So basically in basically the rules and stuff, everything gets respected at the same rate. Basically, if no matter what frame rate you are, the FBX import doesn't change in timing.
Yeah, that's correct. The thing is that's not normal, because I also tried that with other virtual reality software, and with others you really have to do that manually. So you sometimes have to stretch that out to like this for every frame. So that's about frames per second. I also showed you how to set up this correctly. And so the next thing is I will see what's happening when I just go to the Redshift render menu. So I think you also have your own renderer. Maybe you're more the Arnold user or even Mentoray, but it doesn't matter too much for the setup of the shader. So my choice now is just render Redshift. So let's see. I just go to hit play. And of course, you would see there is no color in the render view. And that's because this is just a standard shader that is coming with Quill. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I will open up my hyper shader, which is that button over there. And let's drag it to over here. It was on the other screen, so you couldn't see it. And you can see there's a material for every layer, because you remember we exported it that way, but we don't need that. So I just let's give it a second. Yeah. So we just select everything by selecting, let's select all by type, geometry, and assign just the standard material to everything first to clean that out a little bit, and then go to edit, delete unused nodes. So we just end up with the Lambert, and I'm gonna decrease that menu size a little bit. Decrease it a little bit.
If you didn't choose add export, if you wouldn't have chosen add material to a layer, then you would end up with what you see right now in the hypershade, right? You wouldn't have any materials.
Yeah, that's correct. So I just checked it for showing you that this is coming with materials, but we don't need these materials, so I just deleted them. So the next thing is I will create some shader that actually contains the vertex color informations. And for that going to create a Redshift material. So yeah, just use the standard material of your render that you are using. For example, my Arnold or sorry, the performance is a bit bad now, but yeah. Yeah, okay. Now he created it. And hit that button, it just shows you the in and output connections, and it also resizes the screen so that I can see better. And the next thing is I will create some vertex color node, which is called, in that case, Redshift vertex color. And you remember, we have to fill in the name of the vertex color that is coming with the Quill exports. And if you forget it, then you can easily go back to a mesh display color set editor and click onto some object in the scene, and here it is again. So just copy it, Control Z, and fill it inside the eyes vertex color node. And now I just can plug it inside the diffuse color over here and select everything again. Select all by type, geometry, and assign the shader. Assign material to viewport selection. I just did right click, assign material to viewport selection. Now he's calculating again. And you also already see that we now have our colors inside. Yes. So the next thing is, if you exported your colors in linear or gamma color space, whatever it was, you can choose to create a color correction node here to invert that color gamma to have that correct color again here. Now it's already correct, but say you exported to whatever gamma, like or linear, then you should create a color corrector and plug it in between to reverse the gamma. So I can set that, for example, to 0.333. That should be the correct amount if you exported it the other option with the other option. But now the 1.0 is correct. And you also could increase the values over here, like increase the contrast, also the gamma a little bit maybe. And also I like to increase the saturation sometimes. So you can do a lot of stuff here with the color. And yeah, so far so good. I now want to import some background to see better what's happening here and don't have that black background anymore. So I will import some background scenes, background standard objects. Now I have imported some objects for the background, like that one, for example. And I don't need everything here, but just that one. So I hide everything else. And now I drag that under the scene a little bit so that it's in place. And hit F for focus, the middle point of the scene. And now I press render again. So you already see there is some background in. And next thing is I jump back to the hypershade. Oh, sorry, this is not the hypershade, this one. Okay, and I will now change the values of this material so that they are looking better, basically. So we go to reflection over here, decrease it all the way. And also the refraction transmission, we don't need that. Or maybe just a little bit, but don't care too much about that. We first want to create some cool bump map on it.
Are you using the default light right now? Is it the default light or?
Oh yeah, it's a default light. Yeah, I can. That's really when the magic is happening. So I can do it now with importing some light or creating some light. You can just go to your renderer menu, like Arnold or Redshift, and create some light, which is over here. Redshift physical light is called for Redshift, and then I hit the button L to look through selected. It's just a shortcut I made up. It's easier. You can just do the same by pressing space and press panels, look through selected. Then you look through your spot, and now you can toggle around it in within the scene. So and I also press on render again, and now you really can see that a lot is going on here. You can set up this spot wherever you like, maybe in the back, and I just create a duplication of this spotlight for the fill light. So I press Ctrl D to duplicate it, and also again look through selected by pressing L, and now I'm inside my the other spotlight, or should be. No, sorry, what's happening? Oh, sorry, I didn't select the correct thing. So now duplicate it. See that one, and now again panels, look through selected. Now I have a second spotlight, as you can see here in the render menu, and you can set it wherever you like to, right? So
I have a question. I usually do the light, like the rough light first, in order to be able to adjust the bump map. Do you do it the other way around? Because I notice a lot of times that the bump map reacts very differently depending on what kind of lighting you have, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, it maybe that's the better way to do it like that, to first set up the lighting and then the bump map. So but it's for me it's really like something that sometimes I'm doing it like that and sometimes like that. It's really like a fluid process, you know. It's not really that I'm working off a schedule or something. I just do that schedule here for for this talk.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you can also adjust it. Once you light it, you can adjust the bump map values and stuff again, right? So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, definitely. So now I also, if I have a main light, for example, that one, I increase the size of the main light a little bit to have a stronger spot. And here I change the color value to something that is more yellowish. And on the other hand, on the other side there, I'm gonna choose something that is more blue as a contrast. So and change it, position a little bit. And also I hide the square that you can see here, so just make it invisible. And also on the other side, that one, make it invisible. So what I also already can do when I'm working with the light is set up the global illumination. You can do that by going into the render settings menu over here, and first change everything to Redshift and go to the global illumination tab inside the bar and change it to, I toggle it to side because you see a huge difference now. Change it to brute force, and also here brute force. So now you really can see, or I hope you can see it if it's not too tiny, that especially the shadow areas are really illuminated by that brute force global illumination. I can switch that back to see the difference. Here you really can see it, right? So it's fantastic what this can do. Okay. So I hope you understand. This is just, it bounces back basically the light from every part of your scene. So that's also why we already needed the background to have good global illumination. I can go and create some bump map now. And we can set that up from scratch. So where's our shader now? That one we just created. I can't find it anymore between all these shaders.
I think it's the third one from the left, right? The Redshift material one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So give it a good call name. So you can easily set up or plug a file texture inside the bump map input, which you can find here under the overall settings with the Redshift material. So just hit that swatch, and you can create a file texture now. And now everything is plugged automatically into each other. So that's the fast way. And here you go. If you select that one, you can go to image file and create setup of texture. And for the clay shader we want to create, I found this one is the best texture you can use, which includes the fingerprints of your hands. So I just open it. And now you see that nothing is really happening. And that's because I will show you there is no UV map on it. And this shading system just works with if there is a UV map on it. And that's because it's important when we export it from Quill that you really keep that. Remember that you have to check if you want to export it with UV map or not. If there's no UV map on it, then you have to do that later on by creating an automatic UV map. You also can use best plane or whatever you like, but I found that the automatic is the easiest way, because then everything is calculated automatically for you. And so you already can see in that window here that now everything is working.
I have a question here too. So when you create the UVs, is it also for the current frame only, and do you have to select all of the geometry in order to get the UV maps for all frames, or how does it work?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah. So when you create the UVs like that with automatic mapping, is that only for the current frame, or is it for all frames in the animation?
Exactly. It's just for that one thing that I just selected. So if you want to do that for everything in the scene, then you first have to select everything by type geometry again, right? So don't try to do it in that window. Just do it with the select everything geometry by type. And then when you have selected everything, really like geometry, whatever, then you can go to your VMap back, your VMap, and hit automatic again. But I can't do it now because it takes a little bit. That's really a disadvantage of this technique. So it takes like 5 minutes maybe until he really has calculated everything. So there are some workarounds you can do. I will show you one now. I'm opening up another scene now where I already UV mapped everything. So that's it one. Open. I don't need that because I already did everything here now.
Yeah, that's actually one of the main reasons why I tend to use Alembic over FEX is because Alembic chooses each layer geometry cache as one object, right? So you are able to actually, apply the UVs on one container. And that's why I haven't been using FEX, because I don't know how to handle it. So this is educational. It's really good to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I already UV mapped everything in the scene. So I just did that, what I just showed you, with that object. And it's a bit more structured here. So I also already set up the shader for you with the bump maps. But I show you what I just did here so that we don't miss anything. Okay, so we are now at the bump map here. What I just did in addition here is that I merged some other textures to have one final bump, right? So this is just a bump merge, a bump blender. We can just hit, for example, here, bump blender, Redshift bump blender, and we create it. And now we just can plug a lot of textures inside that bump blender to have whatever texture we like, right? So that's what happened here in the meantime. And also to talk about that UV mapping thing again, there's another option I found which you can do is you can create a projection node. Projection. Let's see, projection. Wasn't it called projection? It was Maya, I guess. Projection. Yeah, here it is. So and we can plug the whole bump inside that projection map, and inside that projection map we can hit interactive placement, create a placement node, yes, and now we basically have created a kind of spotlight that projects the texture onto that surface. And with that technique, it's possible to have the bump maps correctly onto the whole surface without creating UV maps for everything. But there's also a disadvantage coming with that. So if you want to move that object, then you will see inside the texture that it's not staying in place. So still the UV mapping function is the best thing you can stay with. So
basically the texture will slide right over the geometry.
Sorry?
The texture will basically slide over the geometry when you move the character.
Yeah, that's true. But you can use that tech. I will show you. Yeah, you can see it, and I tried it out because I wanted to know if it's possible. I know that's you can't see it here really good, but This is another thing I want to show you later, but okay, yeah, that's correct what you just said. It's flying on the surface. You can just use the projection for things that are static, basically. And for everything that is moving, you should use a UV map. And when you export from Quill, you have the possibility to also export with UV maps, as you can see at the battlefield on the left side. But these UV maps that are coming with Quill, they are really like a little bit big, and everything is on top of each other. So you don't. It's already a bit messy, so you don't really need that. And you just can go to automatic UV mapping again, and then everything is nicely inside that square. Yeah, and on the other hand, you also, I already showed you, you can export everything without UV maps. Yeah, there's no UV map. Okay. So these are the options. So I'm gonna hide it and go to the Redshift. Can you still keep it up? I'm not sure. We just have 1 minute left, and I
keep going if you have time. If you have time, we can keep going.
Okay. So I connected. I assigned this static material to everything in the scene now. I also hide that projection map because we don't need that anymore, of course. And go back to the Redshift render view. And now you will see a huge jump because I already fine-tuned these shaders. But for here, there are no lights yet. So I also unhide the lights, which I just created before in the other scene already. And now, let's see, here we are. Let's give that a couple of seconds to render. It should, yeah. I'm going to the render settings now and change the passes a little bit so that this is going faster for you. It sometimes takes a little bit. Also, if you increase the quality of the textures, so I drop that down to like 16. And go a bit closer. And by pressing Shift on my keyboard, I can define the region of render. And yeah, it still takes a little bit to render everything, but now you can see that the bump map is working pretty good on the surface. And there's something else I want to show you for this artwork. I found out that if you want to create tessellation and displacement, which you usually can find over this node here, by pressing that button, you have input and output connections. Then you should be able to see the displacement map, which is just a noise texture. Like right here, it's just a noise texture connection to a displacement node inside our shader. But I found out it's not the easiest way to select everything and assign the displacement over here on the right side. So you should be able to see it under the where can I see it? Find it again. Redshift, there it is. Redshift. Oh, one second. Shape. Sometimes it's not easy to find everything here. Here we go. So you usually have to select everything manually, but because everything is a new frame, a new object. Every frame is a new object. You don't want to select that for every object and every frame. You better can select the whole group of objects and go to Redshift, Object Properties, create Redshift Object ID node, mesh parameter node for selection. And what that does, it just creates a node which is for everything that we just selected, and it's already selected here, tessellation and displacement. And we deselect the screen space adaptive. Don't ask me why, but it's we just have to do that because it's not working correctly if we don't. If we do it, I can show you here maybe. Ready. Oh. Yeah, come on. So why do we want to tessellate everything and displace stuff? I just do it because to smooth out the object, because in order to create that clay style, it's maybe, or I found it better to smooth mesh it to have that kind of look instead of that. What you normally can do by pressing 1 or 3 on your keyboard. That's what I wanted to create for later in the shader inside the rendering. So that's the setup for the displacement and tessellation. Yeah. So are there any questions about this? Because I'm not sure if you know what I just did.
Yeah, the group thing was new to me. When you treat it as a group, so you can create a group node. How does it appear in this hypershade?
Yeah,
like the Redshift group.
Yeah, it's a trick basically. So otherwise you would have to
thing that you
do
just
that manually for everything. But I'm not sure if you know the difference between bump mapping and displacements, and maybe I should talk about why I want to have a displacement on it.
Well, the displacement changes the actual shape of the geometry. Bump map is just faking a light effect on a smooth surface, right?
Yeah, that's right. So because I wanted to have that real look of a clay shader, I also wanted to have some mesh improvements, so that also the mesh on the outer side that you can see that is or creates the illusion of real clay somehow. That's the displacement map. It's on top of it, and it is a noise. It's basically a standard node that you can find here. Just type in noise, and it creates a noise node. For Redshift, it's also called noise. So I just connected that noise node to that displacement map. It's connected inside our shader. So yeah, that's about the displacement. But I also wanted to have an animation inside the texture and also inside the displacement. And now I'm gonna show you the video file again. So that's the best way how I can show you what I actually mean with that. So if you for example go to second 10 and 11, you will see that also the texture is slightly moving. And I thought that's the best way how to really create that feeling of clay that is needed by your hands. So if I just play it, you can see it. Right? And it's a very slightly, very subtle improvement of the shader, but it was also very fun to set that up. So what I basically did is I created duplications of the shader, which I just created. And the duplication is called the RS Clay Shader Anim. And the difference between these two shaders, they're also interconnected, but don't care too much about it. I just wanted to save notes. The difference is that there is an animation expression inside the rotation of the texture file and also inside the displacement map, noise map. I'm gonna show you. That's basically the expression for everything that has an animation on it. Of course, this shader is not assigned to static objects because we don't want to have a change in the texture in the bump map. But everything that has an animation, like the fat guys, they have that animated texture on it. And I'm now gonna go to the group, which is just an empty group. I created that group in order to have possibility to keyframe that texture. And what this does is I created a new attribute which is called animation, and that attribute let me control the texture on everything that is moving. So whenever nothing is moving, the animation keyframe is off, and whenever something starts to move, so it's becoming on, right? I just keyframe that manually, and it's connected to the shader, which is assigned, and rotates the whole texture.
Can you quickly show the expression again? I just want to check that out, like what it's doing. So if you can open the expression.
Yes. Okay. So we have these two textures, and they both have the same expression basically. And I open up the rotate frame expression, and it's expression that says that this, I copy it, that this rotation frame equals to the time, so that there is a connection to the time inside Maya times something you have to find out, like 250, or just do whatever you like, 124.5 times that specific attribute that I just created to have a control. You understand? It's So this is just the empty group with the control, and I can manually animate that one, which is inside the expression.
And that one is just a 1 or 0 switch, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also did the same for the noise. But here it is not rotate frame, but here it is user time. You of course can do it wherever you like to, like here the color or something, but this was the best for that one. So it's basically the same. So it's just this noise times 2, time times 2 times that keyframe thing again.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy expression, but it's cool for if you want to create that kind of effect. Yeah. And the next thing I did was I created, or I imported, I had to have that idea. I'm not sure if everybody knows it, but if you work and do some stop motion films, then you sometimes have these metal rigs. And I wanted to have that into my scene too, because I like it, that idea that these guys are held by some kind of metal rig or aperture that holds them and creates that illusion of a stop motion film. So I just imported these. I can also open up my final scene now, where you can see all the animation is going on correctly. So I just open the final scene now. Don't save.
And did you create them in Quill or in Maya?
In Maya. That was because the metal ring really was something I made like in, I don't remember, 2008 or something. And I wanted to...
so you could just reuse it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I should, here it pops up. And here you also already can see the cameras, but I will talk about that in a minute. So I'm gonna hide that for a second. And you can see that just the metal rig pops up for that second when the movement of the characters seems to be like not holding by itself anymore. For that I just created manually visibilities, and for the rest it's just something that is inside subgroups animation kind of style. So
it doesn't even have a rig.
Yeah, it's just like this, right? So,
nice.
Yeah. And just, yeah. And here I can, here you can see all the keyframes, and I just animated it by orienting everything. Yeah, like this. And I also gave it a cool new shader, because I didn't, when I first set that up, I didn't do it with Redshift. Back in the days we used Mental Ray. So this wasn't working for that purpose, so I remade also the metal shader and stuff. And so I think it's became a nice effect. Some people also asked me if this is real claymation and made fun about it. It was a cool idea. One of the final things I want to show you is easy ways how to set up cameras, and therefore you just go to the render menu bar over here and create a new camera. And I use my shortcut, which is look through selected L, and I'm now inside my camera, and toggle on the, what do they call it, film gate, or the resolution gate is maybe the best option to see what my camera really sees in its now HD. And now I go back in time to frame 0 and press Shift V and also Shift E to create a keyframe for the translation and rotation. And I'm gonna check the auto keyframe is toggled on. And now I basically go around my scene or 2 shots which I like for example this position and maybe something here when he's falling, or so delete, just go that way and something like that and go back again. So you see it's automatically creating these keyframes over here in the timeline. So the whole thing is 96 frames with it. And now you can see if I go back in time and just start with something like that. And I hit play, now the camera is animated. So if you want to create shots, then you also of course can go just from frame 17 just immediately to frame 18, which creates really a hard cut here. But you have to be very careful with that, because normally if you do cuts like that, then of course you will have a very heavy motion blur of your camera. But because you remember we are trying to emulate clay style or claymation style, we don't really have some motion blur, because I'm not really sure about that, but I think that it's not possible to create motion blur with stop motion films. Could that be?
You could do it in the post.
yeah, that's the only way, I think, maybe. I don't toggle it on. You can see it in the render settings if it's toggled on, like motion blur over here. So just let it disabled, and then you're fine with jump cuts. And the other thing you can already can do is create some. I will show you now with the cameras that already exist. So here I did some fine tuning, some cool fine tuning, but I think that's something for another tutorial maybe. Because that camera is actually connected with some nodes so that it automatically knows the distance to the objects. This is important when you create depth of focus. You can create, I just very shortly go over this. You can add depth of field over here by just hitting that checkbox, and you can see already that there is some expression from me inside, but this is now a bit difficult to describe. But you also can animate that focus distance manually here. So you can say if the camera is close to the object, then you have a short focus distance animated here, and if it's far away, then increase it. And there's also one thing I can show you now, is you can create some wiggle to the camera, and you can do that easily by selecting it. If I now hit play, for example, you see very slightly, but maybe not very clear, that the camera itself is shaking also. And I like that idea because when you do create virtual reality animations like in Quill or VR or whatever, then you usually have to do that with your hand. Or you can do it with your hand. With the new upgrades in Quill, you also can do it with motions, with motion keyframes. But I also like the shakiness of a handheld camera. So you easily can fake that in Maya by going to, let's see, I sometimes don't find anything. Here it is. You can create a shake, and it's under film back. Shake enable, just hit OK. And
I had no idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, okay, you can't really see it now, but I think because the streaming is not good enough to see that. But there is some shake now inside the camera, and you can keyframe that manually, but you also can create an expression, and it's actually better to create an expression for that because that creates a more random effect for the camera shake. So what you can do is something like this thing is equals to noise time 1.8 and yeah, something like that, and that creates that shakiness. You can, if you decrease it, maybe like 10, then you should be able to see the wiggle is stronger, or the timing of the wiggle is stronger. Now it's really strong. You should see it now.
Yeah, we can see it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I can also, that's for the Y value. Yeah, now it's really like strong enough. Okay.
That's super cool. Like, when did they add this? I've never known that they had it. So
yeah,
it must be like fairly new, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's about the camera so far. And let's see. What can I say else? Yeah, some improvements of the render settings. You can, for example, increase the passes. I'm gonna go for 90 or something around 90 is always nice. Check the enable progressive rendering. I don't remember why, but I have some problems without progressive rendering, so I always check it now. And check also the global illumination is on brute force. Check the automatic memory management. It really makes a difference. Before it took me like 5 seconds, and when you hit it, it's 4 seconds. So it's an improvement of a couple of seconds. Always is nice. And if you need more refractions, then you should increase that value. Refraction channels, and you also can create a photographic exposure. This is something I always do with my artworks. So I'm gonna create it by that button, create Redshift photographic exposure. Now it's already inside. So I can show you what this does. If I hit the render view here and hit play, it just you can adjust the whole picture during render. So I'm usually doing a vignette on everything. Normally it would look like this, and here you have a vignette. And you can also increase the saturation or decrease it and stuff like that, right? So this is a post-process effect. Yeah, that's it.
What do you usually render out? Do you render PNG sequences, or what format do you usually render out?
Okay, yeah, I can. I usually render just in standard JPEG. So not really TIFF. I know there's some compression artifacts with JPEG, but if you do like a quality like 95 or 100, then it should be okay. So because you also have a lot of probes in here anyway, so if you don't increase the passes to something like 1,000 or something, then it doesn't really matter if there's a compression artifact in here.
And then you usually just import it into Premiere or something to do the final pass. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Afterwards, I'm going to Premiere usually, and I'm doing also the sound effects and stuff, and music. Yeah. And there's something I'm not sure if I'm doing it wrong or something. Maybe you know it if you know Redshift, but it's actually just possible to render out one camera with Redshift. It's a bit shitty because I'm used to like Arnold, and in Arnold you can just press with use add renderable camera, and then there's another camera which I can render out, but with Redshift is somehow not possible. I don't know, maybe you know. So
no,
you can see
I have that same problem. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
We have one question from Alex. He's asking, is there a particular reason why you prefer working with FBX as opposed to Alembic and Maya? Are there any advantages for using them in any of the processes you have shown today?
Yes, I can show you. I'm gonna create some new scene. I'm going to create or import the let's see, scenes Zona ABC, right? It's exactly the same but as an ABC. And here's one with separated alpha, but just to test the difference, but I couldn't find any difference. So I import the ABC now. Sorry, this is now something I have to do with my plugin manager. First, if you can't import it, then this is a reason, because you haven't loaded the ABC import over here. And then I can try it again. Import ABC Alembic. Import. And now it's the same scene, right? But if you know,
but this won't have vertex colors now the way you did it. So you would have to go through the Alembic importer to get the vertex colors.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you would, if you do it that way, you will get the vertex color.
Okay. Yeah, super nice. I didn't know that. But it's also you just have the animation process is different, right? You just have one object, could it be? Or for the whole thing.
You do.
Yeah. So there's no keyframe invisibility, so I can't change it manually. Or is there a way?
Yeah, you would have to react. No, I don't think there's keyframes. You would just have to export an adjusted version from Quill directly again. So
with the FBX, you have if you go to the graph editor, you normally would see every keyframes here. So you could adjust them, but with the Alembic, there are no keyframes.
You would just adjust the animation and re-export. Like, I don't think Alembic shows keyframes for geometry cache.
Okay.
But a huge advantage is if you apply a shader now on the character, it's much faster because it takes each animation layer as one object, so you can just drag the shader and drop it on. And that's why I like Alembic so much, because you don't have to wait for it to select all geometry. And then, like, for example, if you create a shader, you can just drag it on top of that and it will affect the entire animation. So I think that's a big advantage. It's just much faster, but it's really more a matter of preference, I think. Another thing about Alembic is, in this case, Eric would be able to use geometry motion blur. So if you turn motion blur on, it will actually work on these animated characters.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. Thanks to everybody who has finally made it to. We are now at 1.5 hours. But yeah, it was nice to talk about it and also improve my English skills a bit. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm usually doing giving workshops in Germany. They are usually not in English, but sometimes we are also going outside, like Helsinki and Amsterdam, and giving some workshops over there. But at the moment, it's not possible, of course. So everybody has to stay inside and keep keep here healthy. And yeah. Thanks everybody. Thanks Guru for making this possible. Cool thing.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thanks, Pierre.
Thank you.
This was really good. Thank you so much.